Joining me now, Colorado Congressman Joe Neguse, chair of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, former manager for Trump's second impeachment, and author of Courage in the People's House. Congressman Neguse, as always, thank you for coming to the Sunday show. Why is Speaker Johnson trying to rewrite the history of January 6th?
Well, good morning, Jonathan, and it's good to be with you. Look, we've known from day one that this speaker is a sycophant of former President Donald Trump. He comes from the extreme MAGA wing of his party, and so it's unsurprising that the actions that he has taken as speaker during his early tenure here, or early part of his tenure rather, as speaker, have been consistent with what President Trump and the MAGA wing of his party would demand. That includes, of course, this baseless impeachment inquiry that he apparently will put on the floor of the House later this week. And of course, it includes the announcement that you made regarding the blurring of video footage, which I think is just deeply, deeply distressing and problematic. To think that he would take this step and impede the work of law enforcement, the Department of Justice, as they seek to hold accountable individuals who participated in that violent mob to essentially disrupt the peaceful transfer of power, I think would shock the conscience of most Americans. But again, it's unsurprising, given his record and the reality that he was one of the legal architects, or rather the architects of the baseless legal strategy that Republicans pursued in an effort to keep Donald Trump in power nearly 4 years ago.
Now, when, as I mentioned, you were an impeachment manager in Trump's second, right, the second impeachment, the one as a result of January 6th. In y'all's investigation, did Mike Johnson come up, his actions, did they come up?
Well, I mean, his actions came up more in the context of the proceedings in the House, and that is to say the Electoral College certification itself. And this has been well documented. And of course, Liz Cheney and others have spoken eloquently about this. But the reality is he was one of the principal architects in the House of this strategy to essentially deprive Joe Biden and the American people of the valid electoral result in 2020, and to try to subvert the will of the voters in 2020. That strategy was baseless. It failed, as you know, and unfortunately, it culminated in the attack on our nation's capital on January 6th. So again, it's symptomatic to me of the extremism that has metastasized within the Republican Party over the last several years, and it should concern every American.
You mentioned this in your first answer, but why is, and I want you to elaborate, why is Speaker Johnson allowing a vote to authorize a baseless impeachment inquiry into President Biden, especially when there is no concrete evidence? Is this just a sop to the far-right wing of the Republican majority?
Well, you have asked the salient question, why? Why pursue a baseless impeachment that the American people know has no evidentiary basis and will be a waste of time? In my view, the reason is twofold. First, it is political retribution, as we've been discussing, and as the American people well know. Several years ago, almost 3 years ago now, President Trump incited a mob to ultimately subvert the peaceful transfer of power. He was rightfully impeached on a bipartisan basis for his conduct, and he has been focused singularly ever since on political retribution. And the sycophants of his in the United States Congress have taken that same approach. And so this impeachment really is political retribution. It's political revenge on behalf of President Trump. The second reason is the Republican Party in the House is devoid of any substantive policy ideas that would ultimately benefit the American people. They are not focused on trying to make the lives of the American people better or easier, and instead are very much focused on these political games. And again, that's unsurprising given the track record of the last 11 months. As you well know, Jonathan, they tried to shut the government down twice. They tried to default on our national debt. The only thing of substance they've done in 11 months is expel George Santos, which of course took Democratic votes to ultimately accomplish. So it's a very deep contrast and stark contrast with House Democrats, who have been focused on putting people over politics, lowering costs, growing the middle class, building safer communities. So for me, I think it's pretty clear this is an effort to obfuscate away from the lack of any policy agenda on the part of the Republican Party in the House.
You and I are out of time, but I got to touch on your comment about the impeachment inquiry being a waste of time. And real quickly, as you well know, there are two funding deadlines coming up, one in January and another in February. Yes or no? Will Speaker Johnson be able to get a deal done to avoid a government shutdown?
You know, if past is prologue, I think that it's unlikely. I'm certainly very concerned about those deadlines coming up in January, and I think we would be far better served as a country if Republicans would work with us as House Democrats on ensuring that we fund the government and address some of the pressing needs and challenges of our time, rather than pursuing political theater at its worst, which is precisely what this impeachment is sure to become.
Congressman Joe Neguse of Colorado, as always, thank you for coming to the Sunday Show.